I apologize for interrupting your lunch, but we need to get our speaker up here. I was introduced as Senator Christensen. I'm ex-Senator Christensen. And there is life after politics, believe me. It's my privilege and honor to introduce someone who I flatter myself by calling her friend, but I truly feel she is one. Ann Milner is currently serving in the Utah Senate. She is in leadership there as the whip in the Republican Party, and she's doing a tremendous job for us. You are well represented by this valuable lady. Ann grew up back in Tennessee and Kentucky area. She started her college back there, and I'm not even going to try to recite all the different colleges and universities that she has either taught at or represented, or the latest one, of course, was she was president of Weber State for 10 years, and she still teaches up there. She just can't give it up, and we're grateful to her that she doesn't give it up. And we're happy to have you here today, and I'm looking forward to hearing your remarks.
Thank you so much. Senator Christensen will always be Senator to me. Just wanted to tell you, he spent 16 years in the Senate, and his contribution to the state of Utah and to all of us was so important. Many of you, if you spent much time down there, you know that the most complex, most difficult budget to deal with in the Senate is the social services budget, and he chaired that, and he ably chaired that in a way that really balanced the needs of those who really needed help, but doing it with a very conservative view towards what we should be doing versus what we shouldn't be doing. And as a result of that, I think we benefit today as a state. So thank you all very much. I love always coming here. And I think it's been, you are such a dedicated group of women who really support, first of all, the ideals and the values of the Republican Party, but you also provide leadership for women in this party, and particularly in Weber County, and we're so grateful for that. Just a really quick story. When I first decided to run for office, there are two women back there, Rita and Elizabeth, that I did not know. And so somebody said to me, these are kind of the pillars of the Republican Party for women in this community. You need to go and get to know them and spend some time with them. And I did. And now we are in a very different place, but Weber County used to be very Democratic. And these two women decided that it should be Republican, and they really led a lot of efforts to make a difference here. And so we all stand on the shoulders of those who come before us, and we get our opportunity, I think, then to lead and to try to make our own contributions, and then there will be those who come after us, and that's as it should be. So again, thank you all for all of your support and work, and for your leadership for women in the Republican Party in Weber County. So I'm going to do two things, and then I'm really going to open it up for questions, because I'd rather talk about what you want me to talk about. So a couple of highlights. First of all, everybody asked me this question, so I'll just answer it. how did the session go? It's really different kind of session. How did it go? And, overall, the session went well. I mean, and I am more convinced of that after I saw Idaho have to close down their legislature because they had too many COVID cases. And so I think they closed down for about a 3-week period as a result of that. So it made me realize that we've probably done a pretty balanced job of managing the session. We did that through doing lots of testing during the session in particular. So during the first week on the Senate side, we had an intern or two that got COVID, and we were able to send them home quickly. And then Monday, the second week of the session, we had 2 senators that tested positive for COVID. But they had tested first thing on Monday morning when they came in, so they were sent home immediately. Senator Gibson from St. George just got in the car and went home. And Senator Weiler was the other senator from Davis County. So they came in online after that for the next 2 weeks, but we didn't have any more cases in the Senate. So I think we really worked hard to manage it and were able to balance that. The House, probably, I mean, they experienced a few more cases than we did in terms of the experience. And they did have a couple of House members who were hospitalized and really went through pretty significant experiences. And one of which actually only we saw on screen probably the last couple of days of the session, and worried a lot about him. He's young, he was in his early 40s, and so it was a pretty scary time. But overall, I think things went well. And the interesting part was the mix of hybrid in terms of doing the online as well as the in-person. I thought really made a difference in that someone said to me, and I was with a group actually last week, and kind of said, I heard the rural voice more than I've ever heard the rural voice in committee meetings. And it's because people didn't have to drive long distances, find a place to park, get to a committee meeting room in order to be able to have their voice heard. If they chose to come up to the Capitol, they could. We did social distancing, etc. But I think I saw a few of you that were at the session, and people did come in person, but they also were able to kind of watch the session. So every committee room, unlike in the past where there's been audio, every committee room had video. And not only that, everybody had the opportunity to be able to sign up if they wanted to speak for or against a bill. They had the opportunity to sign up before a hearing and participate that way, so their voice could be heard. So I do think, particularly sometimes along the Wasatch Front, we probably take it for granted that we have such accessibility. But you think about people that live across the state, that's probably not always possible. So I think that was a real advantage. And then the third piece is, what did we do? That's the important part, right? It was a pretty interesting year for, as you all remember, last year in March, we passed a budget. We left feeling pretty good about that budget. And because of the impact of COVID on our businesses and our tax collections, the fact the federal government moved the final tax day until July, which meant it caused a structural imbalance for us in our tax system because it moved into the next year. We were all back in May and June timeframes cutting budgets. And so we practically just cut everything out that we had passed, plus we took additional cuts. And across many of our areas, social services, I think Senator Christensen remained kind of protected because of the pandemic. And education, we were very careful about, although we had to cut the 6% that we had given them out. We did give them the kind of basic inflation factor of the WPA at the end of last year. So we came into this year concerned about what revenues would look like, what would be the impact of the pandemic. What I have to say is I think Utah balanced the public health and the economic health in a reasonable way that made a difference for the citizens of the state. And if you look at the indicators out there in terms of how we did, both on the public health side as well as the economic health side, you'd say Utah really did well in balancing that. And in fact, one of the things we found is that we're like in the top 5 states are in terms of economic health. We have a 3% unemployment rate right now, which is amazing. Now, there is some labor market participation that we know is down. So there are people who are not, in fact, applying for jobs in the environment that we're in. So the 3% is probably a little bit deceiving, but overall, we're doing really well. And we're seeing businesses getting back to some degree of normalcy in a very slow and steady pace. So that meant actually our revenues were better than we expected. So we went into the session saying, okay, we need to focus on, we have a kind of combination here. We have some ongoing revenue, but that was a smaller amount of money. We have more money for one time. And so, in this state, we only use one-time money, one time. We don't build an ongoing budget based on one-time dollars. We're very careful and conservative, and we're always going to balance this. First of all, we were able to fund public education and actually restored the full 6% for public education. And that our goal, particularly with the passage of Amendment G, was to make sure we had a very strong framework for funding education, and we were able to accomplish that. In addition, we were able to put some money away in an ongoing rainy day fund, so where the economy is good or it's bad, we would be able to continue to do the growth and inflation factor for public education. So I think we really have something historic here with the passage of Amendment G and legislation that went with that gave us really a funding framework for public education that will stabilize funding and increase it over time. So the second thing we did was to put money in infrastructure. We have a number of projects in the state related to, we have a transportation commission that prioritizes projects. We are a growing population and we have a real need for transportation projects in the state. And we actually, our gas tax does not cover all of our needs. So we're able to make some investments in transportation and other infrastructure related to water projects, transportation projects. One of the things we learned in the pandemic is that broadband really is, internet access really is a utility that we need to make sure is available across the state, and we still have lots of rural areas that that's not true. And we actually even have some spotty places and others where last mile still needs work. And so investments in our internet infrastructure to accommodate needs, and an investment in our recreational facilities, our parks and trails systems, which is something we've always valued, the quality of life in this area. So we're able to make some major investments there. And at the same time, we were able to fund some of those priorities. We were also able to do a tax cut. We had set aside some money for a tax cut, with revenues holding strong. We actually did the tax cut, so we did a tax cut on Social Security income. We did it so that our those who are living on really fixed incomes of Social Security get some tax relief from that. We did a cut on military retirement income. We are one of only about 5 to 7 states in the country that tax military retirement income for those who have served us and given us their a life of service on behalf of all of us. So we're able to implement that tax cut. And then third, when the Trump tax cuts were done, there was, it impacted disproportionately our families here because of the way our state tax structure was tied to the federal tax structure. And so we also went back in and tried to ameliorate that impact on families with dependents. And so we did a tax cut for families with dependents, and we're able to make a major investment there that really will support our families. So I think it's kind of tied to Utah values, taking care of our elderly, taking care of our military, taking care of our families in the state. So, and with that, I will open it up to questions because you probably have questions and rather talk about that. So, yes, there's.
I know you focus mainly, I don't know.
Do you mind if I come out here? Is that
Oh,
okay?
please do. I know that we always come to you for our questions on education specifically, but I'm wondering, were there any other hot topics this year that you kind of